Burner Network every Friday at 9 p.m. Joining me this week is actor, dancer, performer extraordinaire, and friend to the show, Matthew Brown. Thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
So let's start off with the big news of the week, and that is the James Harden saga. I'm officially branding it a saga because that's absolutely what. So to recap, back in November, James Harden demanded a trade. The Houston Rockets have not traded him to date. I've heard conflicting reports between them not wanting to trade him and or not getting a good enough offer to pull the trigger. Either way, he has not been traded. So then instead of showing up to training camp earlier this week, he decided to send a message by not showing up to training camp, partying with rapper Little Baby, and going to strip clubs, all while not wearing a mask. Now,
Yeah.
I have so much to say about this.
I mean, that's how I always retaliate from not going to work. I know that like when I can't go to work somewhere, I just, I'm gonna go into my bank account, I'm gonna take out a bunch of ones and I'm just gonna hit the strip. It's a little, yeah.
Yeah, like every time I've called in sick, I've definitely been at the strip club, but
Yeah. Yeah. And letting my employers know that I'm there too.
yeah, and I'm posting it on Instagram.
Yeah, the media
Uh
finds it out.
So I want to get your general thoughts before I go on multiple tangents. Like, how
Right.
did you first react when you heard this news?
I, as is with NBA drama, I was like, oh, okay. When I heard he wanted to be traded, first thing, because I was like, oh, all right, so it's over for Houston now. Like they just don't, he doesn't want to be there, and like good luck getting a deal for him that's going to be worth anything when everybody knows he doesn't want to be there. And then the like going to partying. I mean, the that's already not the greatest in the most regular of times. And then you're in the middle of a pandemic, going to strip clubs. Like, we all miss being out anywhere, even the strip club. But now's not really the time for that. And then you're going to now he shows up to camp and, you know, uh, I don't know. I think it's going to be rough for Houston to get any value back for him, which is
Mhm.
definitely going to cripple them for a little while. And it just seems a bit like, I mean, if from the outside it seems like an odd choice, to force his way out and then not get. But I mean, this is it. Like players can kind of do what they want to do in
You mean
this
force your way out
era
and
that
not
we're
get
in.
traded? Is that
Yeah,
what you?
force your way out and
Yeah.
not get, or just get traded for like, I want out and this is what I'm going to do to get myself out, and then
Hmm.
cripple the team moving forward that invested in you and did stuff in the past for you. So, but I mean, it's his decision and it's what he wants, but it's also, I don't necessarily think he's going to get the exact thing that he wants, which is getting himself to Brooklyn. So
Yeah, like I don't think the Brooklyn thing's gonna happen realistically at all.
no.
Like, I mean, as much. I mean, what a clown car that would be, honestly. Like, that's
I
just a straight up clown car. Like,
I would just want to see it just to see how it either works or completely falls apart.
I
And I
would I
mean,
would hate watch it. If he was on Brooklyn, I would watch that the same way I watch like 90 Day Fiance. Like it wouldn't even be basketball to me anymore.
yeah.
Like that's not even about hoops. But like okay, basically for me, I hate absolutely everything about this.
Hmm.
And I want to start with like the whole player empowerment argument. Like everybody's just like, oh, like that's player empowerment. This is the era we're in. And people are like, has player empowerment gone too far? And this, that, and the other. And I'm just like, and I actually have to give Andrew Sharp from the Greatest of All Talk podcast for bringing up this point because I thought he put it really well.
Mm.
And that is, this is a superstar empowerment movement. Like, this is not a player empowerment movement because when you really think about it, it's like no other player on the Houston Rockets is empowered by what James Harden is doing right now.
No.
You know what I mean? And in fact, it's the complete opposite. They're actually hurt by his actions, by not showing up and by not wearing a mask. So it's
Mm.
like, I feel like we really have to rethink this whole player empowerment movement, and it shouldn't be called that. Like, it needs to have a whole other name, a whole other brand, because it's like, that's not actually what's happening.
Yeah, PJ Tucker can't pop in and be like, hey guys, I don't want to be here anymore, and I'm going to be at the strip club for a few days and then show up when I want and trade me out of town, you know?
Yeah.
And it's funny because I feel
And
like
he does
maybe,
want to trade.
yeah, and he does want to trade out of town, you know? And it's interesting to me because it kind of reminds me, and it's like old wounds for me, but like the Alonzo Mourning not showing up to camp
Oh,
thing with the
yes.
Raptors, like
Oh, yeah.
it reeks of that type of thing where it's just like, I get that I get that you want to have some type of control and say and where you want to go and the things you want to do, but that stuff kind of then happens outside of the contract. Like before you sign your name on the dotted line of a contract, like that's when you get your free agency is your first opportunity to get that thing.
Hmm.
And like this and the way he's going about it, like not saying to not saying to people, I spoke to the organization, these are the conversations we had, this is what they're not offering me, this is why I'm upset. It's just like, I want out of here, so I'm going to do my own thing until you guys figure it out. That's not, no other player in the league except for maybe a list of the five most elite stars in the league can get away with something like that. And you can only get away with something like that for maybe even a couple of years, because how long is it going to be like that James Harden, if James Harden has one off year, no one's putting up with that. Think
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
realistic. You know what I mean? Like maybe the Knicks will be the crazy ones to be like, we'll take them. But then after 2 off years, now no one wants to have anything to do with you.
Yeah, I mean, and this is how it's a good point. And this is how I feel about people potentially trading for him, because I feel like you got to really not just look at this year, but you really got to look at his entire time in Houston. Because when you really break it down, it's like he couldn't play with Dwight Howard, and then he couldn't play with
Mm-hmm.
Chris Paul. And now he can't play with Russell Westbrook. And then D'Antoni leaves. Like he wasn't fired. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like he chose not to renew his contract. And then
Mm-hmm.
Daryl Morey quit. He also wasn't let go. He quit. And
Yeah.
then he said, oh, I want to spend time with my family. And then 2 weeks later moved across the country to Philadelphia. So it wasn't about that at all. And it's like, at what point do you have to point the finger at Harden? Like, at what
Right.
point it's like, is he actually the person that is maybe not solely, but heavily responsible for this toxic culture in Houston that everyone has wanted to leave?
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
like, you think about, oh, like who wants to trade for Harden? Well, he's one of the best players in the league, but it's like, yeah, but you're also taking on this like huge like toxicity culture risk, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I don't know. Like, obviously, they did get really close that one year when Chris Paul had that injury in that series against Golden State.
Mm-hmm.
But like I don't know. It's like, at what point do you have to point the finger at Harden? You know, and then you think about like him being like a top 5 guy in the league and his likability and stuff. It's like, I don't know who's buying a Harden jersey at like his next stop based on like what's happened in the last week. You know what I mean? Like, I can't
Yeah.
imagine Harden jerseys are flying off the shelves right now, because he's made some moves that are like deeply unlikable across the board. Like, I haven't been like a Rockets like fan or hater. I've been pretty indifferent to Houston, but I felt really like pissed off by his
Mm-hmm.
actions, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and that's coming from a fan that's like totally indifferent. So I can only imagine what the Houston Rocket fans feel right now.
Yeah.
And I like, you know, I was thinking, I was like, because like, you know, you're a performer, I'm a comedian, and like, I don't know how it's like, obviously as a comic, things are more hostile when you're on stage and you're dealing with audiences. But
Right.
I'm like, the best way the Houston Rocket fans could possibly react is to not show up when he's in town again.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, when fans are allowed again, they
Mm-hmm.
should just not show up, because there's different levels to like audience hostility. And I was like thinking about this breakdown, if you want to walk with me
Okay.
on this path. So obviously
Mm-hmm.
you want laughter and applause. That's number one,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you get that consistently as you get good. The second, this is going to sound crazy, is booze,
Yeah.
because you don't necessarily want to be booed, but a boo is still an emotional reaction from the audience, and you can
Mm-hmm.
still work with that as a performer.
Yep.
And I think with players, it's the exact same thing. It's like, so many times you've seen a player go back to the city they were at, they get booed, and they score like 30 plus points.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like Vince Carter did it. Like so many
Oh yeah, he
players have
did.
done that. And so it's like you don't necessarily want to go there and like boo him, because he will just use that as fuel and like drop like 35, 40 points in your
Mm-hmm.
face and you'll be crushed. And
Mm-hmm.
then it's like the other one is silence. Like that sucks. But at least you kind of still have their attention
Mm-hmm.
as a performer. But I also think that's why the bubble was so difficult, is the silence. And
Yeah,
it's
because you
hard to
didn't
get.
get any immediate feedback
Yeah,
for a sport that's been played in stadiums by professionals with immediate feedback to feed momentum. Like
yeah,
that's, you didn't have that, right?
yeah,
So,
you don't have that fuel.
mhm.
And then the worst thing is when they're not even looking at you. It's
Yeah.
like a bar, they don't even want you there. They're talking to your friends, they're trying to talk over you.
Hmm.
Like that's actually the worst. And it's just like that classic Mariah Carey, like, I don't know her
Hmm.
kind of shade. That is the kind of shade I want the Houston Rocket fans to throw at James Harden for the rest of their lives. Like,
I mean, it's just, yeah, I don't even, I can't imagine. He's just putting himself in a really like precarious position in terms of like if he cares about being liked. But I feel like if you don't win and you're not liked, like what have you really done? Like
mhm.
he's done a lot in the league already, but I just mean moving forward. You know what I mean? If you force your way out of Houston, the Houston fans hate you or they boo you or they don't show up. Okay, it is what it is. Let's just say for argument's sake, he gets himself to Brooklyn, spends 2 years in Brooklyn, doesn't win anything. Now it's like, okay, well, now what?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
who were you in the league? Like you were an amazing scorer, but then people are going to remember that type of thing. And if you're talking about legacy, they are going to remember that type of thing. So to me, I've always felt like if there's a reason that you want to force your way out of town, or like it might sound crazy and it's definitely a fan centered thing for me, but like you're almost better off finding a way to say so publicly and letting them know that it was someone in management, something was the
mhm,
reason why you
mhm.
wanted out. But like forcing your way out in this particular type of way just doesn't feel, I don't see how it ends unless of course it ends with the championship. I don't see how it's going to end super well. And I highly doubt that Houston is going to honor that trade, a trade to Brooklyn.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, like he should be more transparent with like the fans or just the public at this point, just to save face. Cause like
Yeah.
there is a lot of talk about the Houston Rockets owner. Oh, his name it has escaped me, but that he's a Trump supporter.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like I could see like
That
that
could be a part of
bothering
it.
him. It would
Yeah.
certainly bother me, but at the same time, I haven't heard him directly be vocal about that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if he's really the problem. So I can't sit here based, looking at what we know and say that like, oh, that's really the problem. It's this like internal thing.
Mm-hmm.
Really, his actions have shown us that this is just ego.
Yeah.
And that's sad. When you really
Yeah.
think about that, that's really sad that
Mm-hmm.
he has lost out on his best chance to win a championship, which was really with Chris Paul,
Mm.
to ego, because he wanted Chris Paul out. He
Right.
wanted, right? And then he got Westbrook. Like they gave him everything he wanted
Yeah.
and he still wasn't happy. That's why I am like really, really pointing the finger at him
Mm-hmm.
on this.
And
Be-
also, didn't he, correct me if I'm wrong, but similar, not the same, but similar type of situation in terms of I want to be the guy when I was in OKC. So I wanted out of OKC. Is that not correct? Or
he
did
was
they just move
traded.
him? They did just move him. Okay, cool, cool. I
Yeah,
wasn't sure if
yeah.
he was trying to find a way out of town. Okay.
Well, he was
Okay,
like the
never mind
sixth man on OKC,
that.
and he was like really overqualified
Hmm.
as a
Yeah, I
sixth man.
mean,
I think he might have won sixth man of the year that year. Like, I don't remember that detail, but like he was definitely closing games. And I think what they were trying to transition to, which I think as a fan was a real loss, was
mm,
having a Westbrook Harden backcourt and
I mean,
making Westbrook an undersized two guard, which would have been more like innovative at its time. Like now
mhm,
we see that all the time, but in 2000, I guess what was that, 12, 13, we
mhm,
didn't see that all the time, but that's what they were moving towards with Scotty Brooks as the coach. And then they just traded him because he was a free agent at the end of that season, and they were like, well, we can't afford to keep him anyway.
Right.
And the crazy thing is that, like, especially us as Raptors fans, we know that winning one championship is worth it.
And imagine how, like, it wouldn't, again, I agree, because of the contract situation, it probably wouldn't have worked. And I know that's not the topic that we're supposed to be on,
Yeah,
but imagine how
imagine.
dangerous that OKC team would have been if they could have managed to keep
Yeah,
Harden.
also it's
I
like, give
mean,
the world one
man.
year. Give us 1 year. And then,
Yeah.
like, if you win it all, then, like what the Miami Heat did with LeBron, maybe they would be willing to take a pay cut to stay together because they're legit winning.
Hmm.
Because Dwayne Wade, LeBron, and Chris Bosh took pay cuts to be together.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. It's wild. It's wild. But, strip clubs and no masks and holdouts. I guess that's where we're at right
Yeah,
now.
I mean, I have to say, like, the thing that actually made me legit upset was the no mask thing.
Hmm.
Because it's just like, you and I are performers. We work in live events and we're based in Toronto. So it's like, it is all shut down now. And it has
Yeah.
been shut down for the majority of the year. And it's like, everything that happens that is against or works against me having my life back just like hurts at this point.
Hmm.
And it's like, maybe that's hard if you've had your job this whole time and you're working from home this whole time, but it's like, I guess it's a bad year when you're like, oh, I'm happy for my health, or I'm like, oh, I'm grateful for my health. Like, that's when it's a bad year. Like,
I mean, that's what this year has forced us to do. It's go back to square one of the smallest things and appreciate the smallest thing. You're like, I woke up this morning, I made myself some hooray. Like, yeah. No large victories in 2020.
yeah, I'm like looking at the way James Harden lives, and I'm like, you wouldn't survive an hour in my shoes, let alone a day. Okay. Like, you wouldn't survive an hour. And I think, too, like, as fans, and like we said, especially as Houston Rocket fans, like, that's got to be extremely disheartening. Like, we talk about like how like Vince Carter, left in a really not great way, and
Mhm.
other players in the past have left in ways that were like not great, like Jimmy Butler in recent years when he left Minnesota, and like Anthony Davis when he wanted out of New Orleans. But
Mhm.
I think like this might actually be like the tipping point where fans are like, I don't like this.
Mhm.
And the other thing too I was thinking about is, like, as this quote unquote player empowerment movement, which like we said is really a superstar movement, has evolved over the years, NBA ratings have dropped.
Mhm.
And I was thinking about, like, I haven't heard anyone make that connection yet,
Mhm.
but I have a theory that I think it is related, because I think diehards like you and me, like, we just follow the league and we follow the Raptors and we watch it all move. But if
Mhm.
you're a casual fan, you're tuning in to the finals and when your team is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, if we're not, as I say, irrationally, emotionally invested, then you're not going to keep us. And you
Mhm.
can't keep us if you don't give us that chance to invest in you emotionally, because that's
Yeah.
really what sports is.
I thought that for a little while now too, because the lack of parity that the NBA has means that you really do at times, especially when you're like those years where the Raptors were getting good, they were getting close, but they're losing in the second round every time. And all anybody can say about the Raptors is, oh, well, they can't attract a superstar, so they'll never win.
Mhm.
Had me being like, well, then cut the damn league down to 8 teams, 9 teams. What's the
Mhm.
point of having this many teams if superstars can dictate where they want to go, and teams that are big enough, cities, cannot attract a player unless they draft them? Like like, why is people ask why OKC has garnered and like harvested all of these draft picks? That's why. Because they
Mhm.
looked at that team that they had and said, wow, when we drafted really well and had all those picks, we had the makings of like a superstar dynasty type team, and I feel like that's the only way we're going to get back there. So let's gather all these picks. And if you're just doing that, how many teams are actually going to be good? How many teams are actually going to be able to compete? Is it just going to be, you know, Lakers, Boston, Miami, you know, every single year, these like fancy
Mm-hmm.
markets or sexy markets? And it doesn't really, what does that do for fans in Minnesota? What does that do for fans in
Mm-hmm.
Toronto, in Milwaukee? Like, as much
Yeah.
as I want Giannis to come here, like I'm sure Bucks fans are kind of like, holy crap, please, can we just keep him? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we finally got that player again, and who knows when you're going to get that player again.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And like, if Milwaukee loses Giannis, that's bad for the league.
Hmm.
It really is. And like, and we talk about like these teams like, okay, well, we just got to like accumulate all these draft picks and draft really well and blah blah blah. Well, it's like OKC did that, and then they were like, oh, we actually can't afford to keep these guys.
Hmm.
So it's like you're kind of, as a smaller market team, not set up to fully succeed in that way. And you're right, like the lack of parity is a real issue. And then the other thing I think is an issue is this media narrative. And I would say it's a fan narrative to a point,
Hmm.
that it's like it's championship or bust. Like if you don't win, like Michael Jordan, like if you don't win 6 rings, if you don't win multiple rings, like forget it, your legacy isn't worth anything.
Hmm.
And it's like, when you really think about that, that is so false. And we have to get rid of that narrative,
Yeah.
because like Vince Carter meant a lot to us.
Hmm.
DeMar DeRozan meant a lot to us, and,
Yeah.
like had real cultural impact here that is enduring.
Hmm.
And you can't just say that, like, if they didn't win a ring, then it didn't mean anything, because it meant something.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a different sport, but I'm sure Buffalo Bills fans feel a particular way about like going to 4 straight Super Bowls and not winning. But at the same time, they went to 4 straight. Like,
Mm.
no franchise has done that since. There are franchises who haven't even seen that level of success once, right? So to say that, oh, well, because they didn't win it all, yeah, it's a letdown. But at the end of the day, in the grand scheme of a franchise, that's still success,
Mhm.
right? And they haven't seen it since. Right? This is the first year that they're like, oh my god, we're finally maybe good again. Like, so it's playing at a level where you are always competing and always hanging around. Like, would you want to be the San Antonio Spurs? I feel like a lot of franchises would kill to have the last
Mhm.
20 years that the San Antonio Spurs have had. And yes, there were championships in there, but they didn't win every year, but they were
Mhm.
competitive every year.
I think a few franchises have strived to be the San Antonio Spurs. I think Golden State has, and I think the
Hmm.
Raptors
Hmm.
have tried to strive for that. So yeah, we'll see. But you're absolutely right. And I just think, like, again, in a weird way, I kind of hope this is a tipping point, because I'm like, it's not that I don't, I mean, I certainly want players to be empowered, but at the same time, the league is at its best when it's wide open. And that's when it's the most exciting. And like when Kevin Durant went to Golden State, I really checked out. Like I just checked out that year. I was like, I am not interested in spending 10 months looking to see who wins second place when we all know it's going to be Cleveland anyway.
Hmm. Hmm.
Or like, tuning in for that long just to see what a Western semifinals is like.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's hurting the league. There's one other topic. Oh, actually, we're already at the 9:30 mark. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about Kyrie Irving. He referred to the media as pawns.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
said, I don't talk to pawns. And it's like, come on, man. I mean, I don't know if you had anything funny to say about this, but it happened today. So I threw it in our
Yeah.
little agenda here.
Yeah. It's just, it's at this point, it becomes Kyrie being Kyrie, right?
Yeah.
Because he's had so many of these. Like, this isn't a player who, and it's not even to say a player who's been friendly to the media, because you don't have to be friendly to the media. I do have
Hmm.
particular ways sometimes about, oh, you shove a mic right in a player's face after a sporting event, and then you don't like what they have to say. I'm sorry. Like they have an
Mm-hmm.
emotional reaction to what's going on. They are human, but at the same time, this is a dude with the came with the flat Earth theory,
Mm-hmm.
came with like he's just whatever it is that he's going through and that he's dealing with and doesn't want
Been
to hit
going
the
through.
media, like that's fine. And you know what, call them pawns all you want, but I mean the NBA is probably going to continue to fine you. I mean, could there be something, is there something to be said about changing the way the media's relationship is with the players? Yes, like there is something to be said for that, and maybe that's something that could be examined. But
Yeah.
but because it's but because it's him, and because of the way he's kind of always just done things, and it hasn't been my favorite way of doing things, and especially the flat earth thing was the thing that made me tune him out, that I was just like, okay, if that's where
Yeah.
we're at,
Yeah.
I'm kind of checked out. So does he have a point? Maybe, but is that the way to go about it, calling people pawns in this time of people calling people sheep and disinformation and conspiracy theories
Mm-hmm.
and lies?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
no, man, I'm not feeling that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the classic, like, the person who swears too much and then suddenly like they're really angry, but they've run out of words to say
Mm-hmm.
to express their emotions. Like it's very that to me, because it's like you've said too many crazy things for me to like look at you as like a very like, I don't know, to respect your opinions, I
Yeah, I
guess.
can't
Because
take you
yeah,
seriously.
I
Mm-hmm.
can't take you seriously. That's basically what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think there is something to be said for like I do think the players and coaches have too many media obligations. Like they don't need that many press conferences, just straight up. Like every practice, before every game, after every game, like it's too much. Like
Yeah.
I think the post game reactions are good, because it's like that's when you get their like you said, like their emotions. Like
Mm-hmm.
although I'm sure it's like not ideal sometimes depending on the situation, but I feel like that's the one time where it feels like it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Where like the like I think like the practices and stuff, it's like maybe we can like leave them alone like a little bit, because I, as a big Nick Nurse fan, I tune into a lot of these things. It's like these videos on YouTube that have like not even 100 views, like it's just
Yeah.
like a handful of media that consume this. And I'm like watching this and I'm like, we're not learning anything new here, really. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
so like it's like minutia. Like it's not like anything that would make any newspaper. I don't know any fan that's like really like diving into this and consuming this. I think the beat writers probably have enough to work with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
And,
I got
and
yeah.
no, I agree with you, and I think that that's like that might be where Kyrie, like in the sense, would have a point if he articulated it a
If
little
he
bit differently,
articulated it right and
right?
it wasn't derogatory, yeah.
Yeah, because it's just like you don't need all of this access to me, and if you are saying you need all of this access to me, then I should be able to say not today and not have it be a problem and not have anybody write up a thing about me being difficult and not have anything
Mm-hmm.
to say. I want to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's it,
Mm-hmm.
and like, and does it need to result in a fine every time? I mean, yeah, probably not. And on the other side of that for the NBA is like they're trying to make a product, they're trying to sell this thing, they're trying to, by utilizing those interviews, you yourself as the player can get endorsements and deals and make money that way. Cool, but you don't have to have all that access to people all the time. But it would be nice if you could communicate that a little bit in a bit of a better way than just the dismissive,
Mm-hmm.
you guys are pawns after, yeah, after all the other things that you've said. Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, I have some Raptors talk. I'm trying to like, because we're live and I'm like still new to being live. I'm like trying to find the pacing here.
Mhm.
There was one topic I wanted to go through just briefly that Matthew, I apologize, I forgot to send to you, and
Okay.
that is Paul George blaming Doc Rivers for their loss in the bubble. I don't know if you read about
Oh,
this.
no,
I
I
will
have
if
not
you
heard about this.
so basically, Paul George blamed Doc for quote playing too many pin downs and for playing him like Ray Allen and JJ Redick, and that's not his style. And then a bunch of people
Interesting.
looked at the advanced analytics, and then Doc Rivers basically agreed, like, actually, we played a lot of pick and roll, and like, this wasn't actually our style at all. Also, Ray Allen was a great player, and I don't think it's an insult to want to be like Ray Allen.
Yeah.
And it was just like, this whole episode is me just being annoyed, frankly. At the NBA, this is not a good week in the NBA as far as I'm concerned. Like, just the lack of self accountability is driving me absolutely crazy right now, because
Yeah.
it's like he in the moment admitted he was struggling in the bubble, and then like 2-3 months later you're like, actually, I didn't like Doc Rivers plays, and it's like, really?
Yeah, it's that trying to save face thing that people do where they, they in the moment they want to take accountability, and then you check them down later, and then you're like, oh no, well, it wasn't about me. It was about like I thought it was about me, but it wasn't about me. It's actually this, and it's actually this, and the excuses come out. And I think, was that the podcast that he did? Because I think there was
Yeah.
another part of that interview that I saw that was about something else, about like how Kawhi called him up, and they talked about going to we're talking about going to LA. But like, yeah, I mean, Paul George is another one that kind of, it's disappointing from like a fan standpoint to want to see him be that great player, but he hasn't elevated to that level at the times where he's really needed to do that. And he's the guy who wants to be the guy, right? Like, him and Kawhi are 1-2 on that team, right? Kawhi had moments where he really carried that team, but he wasn't able to do it all by himself. And Paul George wasn't there to pick him up when he needed to. So you could sit there and say whatever you want about like the way Doc Rivers ran plays, but like, what excuses do you have for the other times that you didn't? You know what I mean? Like in the past, what excuses do you have for those? Like yeah, it. I don't know. I don't know about that Clippers team. That's all I can really say when it comes to that. But I mean, it also doesn't look particularly great when you, to me anyway, maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't look particularly great where you had a coach, he comes in, I'm pretty sure it's the coach you wanted, then he leaves, the franchise gives you all of this money, you better win next year. Because if you don't, who are you blaming it on? Are you going to go then, oh, well, the Clippers didn't give me the players I wanted? No, because they did just give him a pretty big extension, did they not? Like, that's like,
Yeah, they just did.
yeah, and that's not to say that
A
that's what he's
max
going to say
extension.
next year, the max extension. And that's not to say that's what he's going to say next year, but it's just one of those things where at some point, you gotta take that accountability and just, hold that L, and it's over, man. You're back this year. You have Kawhi, you have Serge, like you improved a little bit on your team. So, don't worry about that. Who ran the pick and roll, and get to work, man. It's all good.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of Surge, this is a great time to go into our Raptors Homer moment. Yes, we're
Okay.
finally talking Raptors.
Homer.
However, however, I'm so sorry to do this. This is the episode where I'm just annoyed because Masai Ujiri earlier this week did his, preseason press conference, and he talked about Serge Ibaka's free agency, and in a very political way, because like Masai really maneuvers like a politician in a way that I do kind of admire. But through politician like speak, essentially said he did not give Serge Ibaka a great offer. He could not offer Serge Ibaka more than a year. And I personally find that very upsetting. I am going to go a step further. You feel free to disagree. This is a controversial statement officially. I think not re-signing Serge Ibaka when you could have, because he absolutely wanted to stay, is maybe the biggest mistake Masai Ujiri has made since the oh my gosh, his name is escaping me. Carroll.
Oh,
DeMare Carroll.
Yeah.
Signing. I think this is his biggest mistake yet. And like, that is like, don't get me wrong, because it's like, it's not a super loaded statement because Masai Ujiri has made very little mistakes.
Right.
So when I say it's his biggest mistake, yeah, you got to realize I'm comparing this to like a lot of other minor mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's like we're saving all this room for Giannis, but it's like if we don't remain competitive, he's not coming here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like if we're not a second round team again, at least,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see Giannis coming here and picking the Raptors over every other team that is saving space for him, particularly Dallas or Miami.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. What do you think?
See, yeah, I'm not sure I agree.
Yeah, that's
Only
fine.
because I feel like there's a few other moving pieces to that. I agree that it sucks that we couldn't sign Serge because Serge did want to stay, and
Mm-hmm.
Serge was a major piece of what we were doing here.
Mm-hmm.
And he was crucial, especially in the 2019 playoffs, hitting some really key shots that are easy to forget in like the stat sheet,
Yeah. Yeah.
and some key shots in the 2 series
Like
we played
he's
last season.
clutch. People forget
Yeah,
how clutch he is. Yeah.
yeah. So, and losing that big, I think is going to hurt us this year, but I'm not convinced we're still not a playoff team, if not a second round playoff team.
Mm.
Where it gets tricky for me to know where the Raptors are going to end up this season, for me, has to do with not playing in a bubble and being the only NBA team that's displaced.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a large part of what hurt us last season was the bubble,
Yeah,
was players
absolutely.
not really being mentally there, and like I thought we would have responded better to having no fans, but we didn't respond the best to it, especially when the
Mm-hmm.
playoffs hit. And so that playing in Tampa Bay with no fans, like if they come out and they are piss poor through 20 games, I'm going to be really worried. But if they
Mm-hmm.
come out and they can do the things they want to do that we know that they're capable of, even without Surge, I still think we're a second round playoff team. And then I kind of have to trust that Masai knows something we might not. Because while I don't think it was smart for him to not to lowball Surge, because I don't want him to get the reputation of you can't trust this general manager,
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
do think keeping those options open for a future that could include a max player of Giannis's caliber, it's that type of Masai Ujiri gamble that looks terrifying, but when it works, and we saw it with Kawhi, right? Like trading DeMar, I was not a fan of that move when it happened. I was
Mm-hmm.
one of those really, really irate Raptor, and then it was because it wasn't just trading him; it was trading him and getting rid of Dwayne Casey for me. That I was like, wait, what? What are we doing?
Mm.
And it worked. So if he manages, he he's got to know something. He's got to have some kind of insider feeling information, whatever you may call that, that he is confident enough that we can still be good and that we can land a Giannis type. And if it's not
Yeah.
Giannis, who the backup plan is, we sort of got to leave that to them. But I agree. I agree in the sense that it's not the greatest look for the Raptors, and it's not the greatest thing for it might not be the greatest thing for team reputation to be like, hey, I know you helped us win that championship, but we can't really invest that money in you right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that that's not a thing that comes back to bite us in the butt.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with part of what you're saying. I agree with the idea that like Masai probably knows something we don't.
Mhm.
I absolutely agree that he generally definitely knows what he's doing and like he has made some risky moves. And I will say, I think it's good that we're going after Giannis because I like that we are operating with that level of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I'm not against us going after Giannis at all. In fact, I love it because it's like I'm not used to having that level of confidence personally. Like I don't know how much self-help things I have consumed to attempt to have the level of confidence of Masai Ujiri, but I do try. And I definitely appreciate that. But I just think like I guess the part where I am disagreeing is as of now, and like obviously like the season hasn't quite started yet, like we are recording this on December 11th,
Mm-hmm.
like I am not convinced that the Raptors are going to be a second round playoff team.
Okay.
as of right now. And I
Mhm.
obviously want to be wrong. So if I am wrong, great. But I'm not currently convinced that that'll be the case because the Eastern Conference got better,
Mhm.
we got worse, and we're displaced.
Mhm.
And we're dealing with things that we dealt with in the bubble that no other team has to deal with. And I do think we're extremely resilient, but it is unfair that we have to be so resilient. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because when you really look at the Eastern Conference, it's like Miami's still great, Boston's still great.
Mhm.
You know, they lost Gordon Hayward, they got Tristan Thompson. But I mean, those key guys that were, going through it in the playoffs are all still there.
Yeah.
Um, Milwaukee is a very good regular season team. I would not be surprised if they were still first in the East.
Mm.
And they have Drew Holiday now.
Mhm.
Playoffs, who knows? We'll see. Brooklyn, obviously,
Mhm.
and Philly.
Yeah.
And
Br-
so, like, that's 5 teams right there that have really either maintained a high level or have leveled up above the Raptors. So it's like now you're looking at being like 6th, 7th, 8th in the East. And it's like, I certainly hope we don't end up in that play-in tournament bracket. I think we're better than that. But
Mhm.
like, I wouldn't be surprised if we were 6th.
Mhm.
And then, I mean, I don't know where Brooklyn's going to land because, like you
Yeah, I
said,
was gonna say that Brooklyn feels like
they're
the one team
basically a
that's a
clown
wild card.
car, but
Yeah.
also like I mean, Brooklyn's such a weird team for the obvious reasons, but when you look at it from a basketball perspective, I'm sure they're all extremely eager to play again. Like, we
Mhm.
haven't seen Kevin Durant in a year and a half. It's going
Mhm.
to be really great to have him back in the league again. And I'm really excited to see him play. But because there's no fans, I think we're going to see a lot more load management. Like, I wouldn't
Mhm.
be surprised if we load managed Kyle this year. You know what I mean? Like, there
Yeah.
was just going to be a lot more of that. So it's hard to know where we're going to place. And there's not as much of a home court advantage this year. So who knows? But I'm just saying, like, I think those 5 teams, at least currently on paper, are stronger than the Raptors right now. And then I
Mhm.
haven't even mentioned the Wizards, which are also a huge, like, who
Mhm.
knows? Who
Yeah.
knows? They were 10th in the East before this Westbrook trade. So they were
Mhm.
10th in the East without John Wall because he was injured all year. And now they've got Westbrook. So it's like, you got to imagine they're going to be better than 10th.
Yeah.
I
And
don't
what
know.
remind me, did Victor Oladipo didn't move yet, right?
Not yet.
Okay, yeah. So the Pacers are still, I think the Pacers are still a playoff team. I might eat
Yeah.
those words later, but yeah. I mean, yeah, the East is going to be more competitive. Um, but I do feel I blindly homer feel almost every year that one of our young players is going to take another step. And so for me, like it's very rare that I will look at a player on the Raptors and be like, no, he doesn't have it. Like and be like, no, they don't have it. They're not going to make another step. I feel like it's been years since I've said something like that about a Raptors player. So I
And you're
look,
not wrong.
yeah, it's just we have good development, right? So
Very
so I
good.
look at someone that like the one person I'm not convinced that will take that step is Chris Boucher yet. I
Thank
want
you.
him to, but I'm not convinced he will.
I
But I
agree.
feel like OG is going to take a step. I am hopeful and feel like Pascal will have a full bounce back year. If not just for the fact that like he won't be in Toronto, no, he won't be at home, no, he'll still be displaced. But knowing that but I'm hoping that the fact that he knows what messed him up in the bubble last time will make him
Hmm.
better prepared for this displacement.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm trusting that. And I feel like if those 3 players make a step, Kyle may regress, but if Kyle can just continue to be a version of Kyle and Freddie steps forward, that's where I'm still kind of confident that we could really still hurt some teams. The wild cards become can Aaron Baines. Am I saying
Yeah.
that? Yeah. Can Aaron Baines and the other new players that we added be serviceable?
Hmm.
Like I don't even think I need them to be great. I'm like, can you just continue to do can you give us some points sometimes? Can you continue to play defense? Can you help the Raptors space the floor for Fred, Pascal, OG, and Kyle to work and Norm to work?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, if you can do that, I think we're still going to be in pretty good shape. But I don't know if we're going to be in Eastern Conference Finals shape yet. I think I need to see them play to really know whether or not we're talking about something like that. But man, oh man, if they can stay good enough, if Milwaukee cannot win a chip, and if Giannis comes to Toronto, I'm gonna cry. It's gonna be the best thing in the world. There's a lot of ifs,
Listen,
as
I
there
hope when
is.
that happens, like it'll be summertime, like we gotta just like message each other and just like a whole group of us like meet in the park and like
Yes.
have like a big cry fest, drink in public, like you know what I mean? Like do the
There's
whole
already going to be a lot of crying, happy crying in
yeah,
2021. So I just want to add that to
that's
the joy
true.
tears, you know?
That's true. That's true. I
Yeah.
mean, like I said, him leaving Milwaukee would be bad for the league, but not if he came to Toronto. That is actually very good for the league.
Mm.
And that is including and not including my bias. Um, I completely agree with you in terms of our player development being great. And I sometimes I worry, and I started to think this more so during the bubble when we were seeing Siakam kind of struggle. Like, are
Mm.
we taking our player development a little for granted?
Hmm. How
You know,
so?
because just like we are really great at it, and I'm really proud of all the guys we have been able to develop through our program, but like we can't expect every player that we kind of like have come through our system become what Pascal has become. And sometimes I wonder like oh, like he was struggling in the bubble, blah blah blah. It's like yes, he struggled in the bubble, but I also think it's like our expectations of him are maybe sometimes a little off as well.
Too high?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
and like with Fred, like I think Fred's had a great trajectory, but like maybe he plateaus. Maybe like he's gotten paid. He said he wanted to get paid. He finally got paid. Maybe he doesn't level up now. Maybe he stays consistent. Maybe like this is who Fred is. Do you know what
Mm.
I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know for sure. Like I'm just throwing it out there, right? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
like we can't expect every top player through our G League to become an all-star, right?
Yeah.
Like eventually it's like no, like we're just going to have like really good role players who hopefully want to continue to stay with our team.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it's just like just a thought I've had.
Mm-hmm.
Um just kind of an observation. And I agree with you with Chris Boucher. Like I don't know how much Chris Boucher is going to level up. I feel like maybe he's the kind of guy that's like I mean, I want to see him level up because I'm rooting for him personally cuz
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I don't know.
For me with him, the things, and again, G League to NBA, but the things that we saw in the G League that he is capable of when it comes to his shooting and his athleticism, we don't even need that to translate fully to the way that he dominated in the G League.
Mm,
We just need like half of that, right? If he can become that 40 something percent 3-point shooter relatively consistently, and then be the person to get like really athletic, battle for boards, get putbacks, be the alley oop guy for Kyle and Fred. Like that's the if that's his ceiling, I'm cool with that.
mhm,
And
mhm.
this is where it's really cool the way the Raptors have this team built is that they do have enough pieces there to really showcase these guys that are really good on this team, maybe close to all-star potential, but maybe just not be there, but just really good, reliable role players.
Mhm.
And then you surround them with Kyle and you surround them with Pascal, and then you kind of can see what you have. And I hope that Fred becomes I there's something about Fred's work ethic and Fred's what's the word I'm looking for? His attitude, the way he approaches the game that makes me think he's still got another gear
Okay.
even
I
after
love
he
it.
got
I
paid.
love it. I love
And
the
so
optimism.
yeah, I'm really excited to see what that gear is going to be. I'm excited to see what that gear is going to be this year, but I'm more excited to see what that gear is going to be when the team is his. When Kyle is stepped
Mm,
away and the team
great
is now
point.
his. Because remember, like watching Kyle and DeMar when Rudy Gay was still on the team, who knew that Kyle and DeMar would become what they became when Rudy was still on the team, because it was Rudy's team. But once it was now Kyle and DeMar's team, we were like, wait, whoa, y'all had that in the in the holster the whole time? Like, how did you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
sometimes you need that free reign to really see who someone's going to become. And we see it all the time, players that can't live up to it, like, right? That's kind of the story of the draft, right?
Yeah.
You draft the top flight player, top 5 player, then like, oh god, I don't know what to do with this pressure, and they flame out. But sometimes people don't flame out.
Right. We'll see. I love
7 minutos.
Wow, I don't know where that came from. Anyway, we've got 2 minutes left.
Cool.
I want to do my very quick Hot Girl Summer Nick Nurse highlight of the week. Honestly, there's been a lot. But to summarize, this Monday you can catch his acting debut on Private Eye.
Oh,
The cameo, yes. He plays himself at a charity function. Really, honestly, can't wait. There's been a lot of like him in the media, him doing press, but nothing's more exciting than that.
Okay, get him,
Right?
Nicholas. Get him, Nick. Get him, Nick.
His Canadian celebrityism, just I love it. I love everything about it. It's so fascinating to me. Also, if you're watching this live this weekend, there is a online coaches clinic which you can actually register to for free, and it's just all these different like Raptor related people doing talks on Saturday and Sunday. I think next talk is on Sunday, and in the past it was just for coaches exclusively, but now they've opened it to the public, and it's through Zoom. So that's really cool if you want to check that out. With that being said, let's wrap up. Matthew, thanks so much for joining me this week on this episode. Where can people find you on the internets?
Oh yeah, so on the internets and the interwebs, you can find me at it's Mr. MGB, so ITS Mr. MGB, and that's on Twitter and Instagram. I just be doing, dancing videos, there's some voiceover stuff there. Whenever I get work, I'll make posts. I cook a lot, fun times.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And you can find me as well at it's me_Catherine, spelled CATHRYN, on Twitter and Instagram. And this show every Friday night at 9 live on the Barn Burner Network at barnburner.ca, or you can subscribe to the Buckets and Tea Show on Spotify and Apple. Thank you so much. And we will see you next week. And hopefully I'm a little less annoyed. Yay!
Yay!